In a Brooklyn federal courtroom in November 2025, an assistant United States attorney did not begin with a stolen document, an encrypted device, or a hidden camera. He held up a phone case, black, decorated with small cartoon animals, pandas, a rabbit, a cat, and a chef's hat. On the back, in clear English letters, was a phrase, 3 words. The prosecutor said this phrase explained everything the jury was about to hear over the next 4 weeks of trial. The words were, "Get rich, good luck." The phone belonged to Linda Sun, 42 years old, naturalized American citizen, born in Nanjing, raised in Queens. At the time of her arrest, she had spent roughly 15 years inside New York state government. She had worked under 2 governors, Andrew Cuomo and Kathy Hochul. She had risen to the position of Deputy Chief of Staff. She earned a state salary of $145,000 a year, and the federal government accused her of secretly working for most of those 15 years for the Chinese Communist Party. She was not accused of stealing secrets. She was accused of something quieter, of moving small decisions inside state government over years in directions that benefited a foreign power. To her colleagues across Albany, Sun was the person who understood the community. To prosecutors, that was exactly the reason, they would later argue, that Beijing had wanted her there. The case is unusual for several reasons. We will get to all of them. But the most unusual thing happened in December of 2025, when a jury that had been listening to the evidence for nearly a month came back to the judge and said they could not agree, not on a single charge. The vote, according to one juror who later spoke to reporters, was 10-2 for conviction, across all 19 counts. On the last one, 11-1. The judge declared a mistrial. The prosecution asked to retry the case as soon as possible. As of this recording, no new trial date has been set. So how does a story like this get to a courtroom in Brooklyn? And why couldn't 12 people, after 30 days of evidence, agree on what they had heard? To understand what Linda Sun was accused of doing, it helps to first look at what she actually did. Every day, for 15 years, on paper. She did not enter government as a spy. She entered as a public servant. According to prosecutors, that is precisely what made the case so difficult. She started, like many New York State employees do, at the bottom. In 2009, she took a position in the state legislature. She worked as chief of staff to an assemblywoman named Grace Meng, who would later become a U.S. Congresswoman. By 2012, the Cuomo administration had noticed her. They hired her as Director of Asian American Affairs and Queens Regional Representative. From there, she moved into Empire State Development, the office that handles economic growth across New York. Later, the Department of Financial Services. Then, when Cuomo's administration ended and Kathy Hochul became governor, Sun was promoted to Deputy Chief of Staff. On paper, this was a career profile that thousands of state employees would recognize and respect. She was American. She was bilingual. She built relationships with Asian American communities across the state, which is a real and useful function in a state like New York. And for a long time, that was who she appeared to be. The federal indictment, unsealed in September 2024, describes a different version of the same 15 years. In this version, the prosecutors allege that Sun used her official New York position, quietly, repeatedly, and over many years, to do small things that benefited the Chinese government. Not espionage in the classical sense, no stolen documents, no frequencies, no micro cameras, something more difficult to detect, and according to the people who study this kind of activity, far more common. The American legal name for it is influence operations. The technical name in federal law is FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It is a law originally written before the Second World War, designed to identify lobbyists working for Nazi Germany. For decades, it was almost never enforced. Between 1966 and 2016, the Department of Justice filed only 7 criminal cases under FARA. Since 2018, that number has crossed 40. And the Linda Sun case became the highest-profile state-level prosecution of its kind. What did the indictment say she actually did? It is worth going through the specific acts because each of them is small, and that smallness is the point. In January 2020, Taiwan held a presidential election. The Taiwanese government, through its de facto embassy in New York, known as TICO, sent a formal letter to Governor Cuomo's office. The letter asked, politely, for a congratulatory message about the election. This is a routine diplomatic courtesy. Governors of New York have sent such messages for years. According to court documents, Linda's son made sure that message was never sent. The next morning, Cuomo posted a different message on his official social media account. It thanked the Chinese government, specifically the Chinese government, for facilitating a donation of 1,000 ventilators that would arrive at John F. Kennedy Airport that day. The message specifically named Consul General Huang Ping, the same Huang Ping who, according to federal prosecutors, was the man directing many of Sun's actions over the previous years. There was no Taiwan message. There was a thank you note to Beijing's man in New York. These small choices add up. Prosecutors said that on at least one occasion, Sun blocked a meeting between Governor Cuomo and the president of Taiwan during the Taiwanese president's visit to the United States. They said she removed references to the Uyghur Muslim minority, which the U.S. government has formally accused China of persecuting, from official New York State statements. They said she secretly added a Chinese government official to a private state government conference call about the COVID response. They said she organized invitation letters from the governor's office that allowed Chinese delegations to travel to the United States and meet with senior New York officials. Letters that, according to the prosecution, bore Governor Hochul's signature, forged. The defense, when their turn came, told the jury something different. Her attorney, Jared Schaefer, did not deny that Sun had cultivated relationships with Chinese consular officials. He argued that this was, in fact, her job. She was the Asian American community liaison. Of course, she met with the Chinese consulate. She also met with Taiwanese community leaders, sometimes accepted honors from them, and her advice on the Taiwan question, the defense argued, was consistent with long-standing U.S. policy, which is that the United States recognizes Beijing and maintains only unofficial relations with Taipei. The defense called the prosecution's case a movie plot that does not hold together, but prosecutors knew that policy arguments alone might not convince a jury, so they turned to the one thing juries understand immediately: money. This is the part where the phone case begins to matter. Federal investigators say that during the same 15-year period when Linda Sun was working her way up through the state government, her husband, Chris Hu, was running several businesses. One of them exported American lobsters to China, another moved seafood through Queens. The businesses on the surface were ordinary. The bank accounts, according to the indictment, were not. Prosecutors say that millions of dollars moved through accounts controlled by Hu, much of it ultimately traced back to Chinese sources. A spreadsheet seized from his computer, according to court testimony, tracked expected kickbacks. He had set up at least one bank account in his mother-in-law's name. What did this money buy? A $3.6 million home in Manhasset on Long Island, a $1.9 million condominium in Honolulu, a 2024 Ferrari Roma, sticker price $243,000, Hermes handbags, all on a state salary of $145,000 a year. The math, the prosecutors said in closing arguments, simply did not work. There was also food. Prosecutors said that a personal chef employed by a Chinese government official prepared Nanjing-style salted duck, a regional delicacy from the city where Linda Sun was born, and delivered it to her parents' home in New York. This was not a single meal. It was an ongoing arrangement. The prosecution showed the jury one text message Sun had sent in 2021 to the head of the Chinese consulate in New York. 6 words, plus an emoji of a face licking its lips. "I want to eat salted duck." The defense said it was a gift between people who shared a culture. The prosecution said it was an asset confirming her preferences to her handler. There was also the phone case, the one with the cartoon animals. The one that said, "Get rich, good luck." Assistant United States Attorney Alexander Solomon held it up to the jury and said one sentence. He said, "Linda Sun was all about the money. The Chinese government knew this, and they kept her on the line with a steady stream of presents, favors, and helping hands." The defense said, "It's a phone case. It's a phrase that hundreds of millions of people in China use every day. It means nothing." For nearly 4 weeks, jurors heard both versions. They saw the messages Sun had sent to her contacts inside the Chinese consulate. They saw the financial records. They saw the forged signature, or what the prosecution said was a forged signature. They listened to her colleagues describe what she had done and what they had not seen her do. They listened to the defense's counter-explanation for each of the 19 charges. Then, on December 12, 2025, they began deliberating. The deliberations lasted 10 days. One juror had to leave because of a pre-planned trip, and an alternate took her place, which meant the conversation in the jury room had to start over. After 10 days, the jury did not come back with a verdict. They came back with a note. On December 22nd, the foreperson handed Judge Brian Cogan a single sheet of paper. After extensive deliberations and redeliberations, the jury remained unable to reach a unanimous verdict. The jurors' positions, the note said, were firmly held. Judge Cogan declared a mistrial on all 19 counts. Outside the courthouse, the defense said the jury's inability to agree showed how flawed the charges were. The prosecution, standing a few feet away, said they wanted to retry the case as soon as possible. They have not yet been given a new date. One juror later spoke to reporters. She said the vote on most of the counts was 10-2 in favor of conviction. On the last count, 11-1. 10 people, after a month of testimony, were ready to find Linda Sun guilty. 2 were not. And under American law, that means she is not guilty of anything. Yet. Here is the thing about 10-2. In American law, it means not guilty. In life, it means 10 people, after hearing everything, were ready to put her in federal prison. 2 were not. Take that math and ask whether it feels like a system working or a system breaking. The answer probably depends on which jury you would have sat on. The defense argument that won those 2 jurors was simple. There was no smoking gun, no co-conspirator on the stand, no intercepted recording of Sun saying she worked for the Chinese government. The prosecution built its case on a pattern: emails, gifts, blocked meetings, money flowing through 80 different bank accounts her husband controlled. The defense said, a pattern is not proof. 2 jurors agreed. If convicted on all counts in a retrial, Sun and her husband could face decades in federal prison. But the first jury never reached a verdict, and until a second one does, she remains, in law, innocent. Here is what is uncomfortable about this case. There are people inside the Justice Department, in academic research, and in the small community of analysts who spend their careers tracking how authoritarian governments build leverage inside democracies. They tend to say something about the Linda Sun case that does not fit on a thumbnail. They say that the work she is accused of doing is the model, not the exception. That a government like China does not generally need to recruit Pentagon analysts with shortwave radios and water-soluble paper. It needs to find people in mid-level positions, community liaisons, deputy chiefs of staff, regional representatives, who can quietly tilt small decisions in small directions over years. Every individual decision Linda Sun is accused of making was small. Whether to forward a congratulatory letter, whether to include a sentence about a persecuted minority in a draft statement, whether to put a particular name on a particular conference call. None of these things by itself looks like espionage. None of them by itself would draw the attention of a counterintelligence officer. The cumulative effect is what prosecutors describe as a pattern. The cumulative effect is also what was extraordinarily hard to prove to a jury, and the trial ended without a verdict. Prosecutors have to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that a person knowingly and willfully acted as an unregistered agent of a foreign government. Not that they were sloppy, not that they should have known, that they knew and chose to do it anyway. The defense in the Sun trial focused on this point relentlessly. Every email between Sun and a Chinese consular official was, the defense argued, the kind of email a community liaison would naturally send. Every gift was the kind of gift exchanged between people who share a language and a hometown. Every blocked Taiwan meeting was, the defense said, consistent with the official U.S. position toward Taipei. The prosecution had a pattern. The defense had an alternative explanation for every individual piece of that pattern. This is the part of this story that no one is willing to put on a thumbnail. The American legal system, in this case, did exactly what it is designed to do. It heard the strongest case from both sides. It deliberated. And it could not, beyond a reasonable doubt, agree. So where does that leave Linda Sun in May of 2026? She is living with travel restrictions somewhere in the United States. She is not in custody. She is presumed innocent because that is what American law requires when there is no verdict. The Department of Justice has formally requested a retrial. No date has been set. A second jury will, at some point over the next 18 months, hear largely the same evidence, with potentially different lawyers, in front of potentially the same judge, and try to do what the first jury could not. There is some reason to expect this trial will look different. After a mistrial, prosecutors have time to revise their strategy. They know which arguments landed with the 10 jurors who were ready to convict. They know which arguments were strong enough to convince 2 jurors otherwise. The defense has the same advantage. Both sides have read the testimony, the deliberation notes that were made public, and the interviews juror gave to reporters. Both sides will refine. This is part of the rhythm of American criminal procedure. The first trial is, in some sense, a draft of the second. In the meantime, the rest of the legal landscape has not paused. The federal government has indicted at least 4 more state and local officials around the country on similar charges. Governors' offices in several states have begun reviewing how they vet senior hires for foreign contacts and undisclosed business relationships. The State Department has expanded its disclosure requirements, and the Chinese consulate in New York continues to operate, as consulates do, in a city of 9 million people. In Manhasset, the $3.6 million house is still there. The Ferrari, according to court filings, is in the process of being forfeited to the government. The phone case, presumably, is in an FBI evidence locker, alongside the photographs of it the prosecutors showed to the jury. There is one thing about this case that the defense and the prosecution actually agree on. Linda Sun did meet with officials from the Chinese consulate. She did receive gifts. She did, in the years she was working in the executive chamber, take certain actions and decline to take certain others. The 2 sides agree on what she did. They disagree about what it meant. So that is the question for the next jury, whenever they are seated. A paid agent of a foreign power, or a competent public servant doing her job. The first jury heard everything. 12 people. 10 thought one thing, 2 thought another. They went home before they could agree. Somewhere in an FBI evidence locker, the phone case is still there. Cartoon animals on the back, 3 words underneath. Get rich, good luck. The next jury will decide whether it was a phrase or a motive. If you have ever worked inside a state government, a city hall, a federal office, have you ever seen something that, looking back now, you wonder about? The comments are open. What's your verdict?